Welcome to part 2 of the AudioLlama guide to setting up your turntable. If you haven't seen part 1, which shows you how to unbox it and do the basic setup all safely without blowing it up, then click the link wherever it appears. Again, if you're not entirely sure of any of the terminology I'm using, click my video for the anatomy of a turntable. It'll be really helpful, tells you what everything is. In this video, we're going to cover how to balance the Tonearm, how to set up the Antiskate, and then in the final video, we'll plug it all in. Okay, so all the basic little bits of the record player are on. We've got the Plethora on, we've got the counterweight on, we've got the head shell on, it's all there. And now what we need to do is do the in-depth configuring, get everything working right together. There are a number of ways of setting the tracking force of your turntable, often depending on the turntable you're actually using. But the first thing you must remember to do is to set the Antiskate to 0. Or if you've got one of the line and sync Pro-ject style Antiskates, then make sure the Antiskate is actually off while you're setting the counterbalance. If you don't know what the correct tracking force is for your cartridge, either check the turntable manual if you're using the stock cartridge, or check the cartridge manual, which can probably be found online if you haven't got a paper one. If you've got a set of digital scales for your stylus, and if you don't, you should, they're really cheap, then this job becomes super easy. Perhaps slightly ironically, I kind of lost my scales last week, so we're going to have to pretend my phone is one. Place your scales on the platter at a point that the stylus can easily reach. If your Tonearm has a Q arm, make sure it is set to the up position, and then position the stylus over the contact point on your scales. Remove the stylus card. Make sure you've zeroed the scales, set it to show grams, and then lower the stylus onto it. So the correct tracking force for the cartridge on this turntable is 3.5 grams. For the sake of the argument though, let's say that the reading I've took on the stylus gauge is either say something like 2.5 grams, or it's 4.9 grams, either too high or too low. What do we do then? Well, the first thing that you've got to do is take the Tonearm off the stylus gauge. Make sure it's either on the up position with the Q arm, and if you don't have one, put it on the Q arm rest. So to adjust the tracking force, rotate the counterbalance at the back clockwise, which will move it inboard towards the centre of the Tonearm. That will increase the downforce. To reduce it, you need to turn it anti-clockwise, in which case it'll move to the back of the Tonearm and make the tracking force lighter. My advice here is adjust incrementally until you get as close as possible to the desired downforce. There is some play, so if your cartridge is designed to be used at 2 grams, often some people can set it to track slightly heavier or slightly lighter depending on their preference and the particular cartridge and its characteristics with your records and with the turntable. This method is specifically for Tonearms with the stopper like on the Rega RB101 featured on the Planet 1. Simply pushing the counterweight as close to the stop point as possible will set the tracking force correctly for the factory installed cartridge. Simples! If you don't have a set of digital scales and your turntable has a counterbalance with markings on it, you can do it the good old fashioned manual way. Now the trick here is simply being patient. Take your time, don't rush it, it's not complicated, but it does take, like I said, some patience. Take the Tonearm off its rest and set it to the down position if it has a Q arm. Adjust the counterweight so that the Tonearm is effectively floating. Notice that the counterweight itself is actually made of 2 separately adjustable parts. The front piece is marked in grams. Now, with the Tonearm floating, hold the rear of the balance in place so that it doesn't move up or down the Tonearm, and then adjust the front piece so that the digits show 0 at the top. Hold the entire counterweight and turn it clockwise until the number at the top shows the correct tracking force for your cartridge. 3.5 grams in the case of this 8095, and with the Autophon on my Pro-ject turntable, 1.8 grams. The counterbalance should have moved towards the centre of the Tonearm, and there you have it, a balanced Tonearm. Next up we have anti-skating. Now I know anti-skating confuses a lot of people because they generally don't understand what it is or what it does, especially with some turntables where the designs look quite weird, but it's not, it's really simple. I'll show you how to set it. Now anti-skating mechanisms come in a few different forms, from the spring system that we have here where there's a spring underneath the Tonearm that does a job and there's a dial to the side of the Tonearm, to the slightly Neanderthal looking design that you see on Pro-ject turntables with the line and sync method. It's a very simple but effective way of doing it, and you do see that system on some bloody brilliant Tonearms. In very brief, anti-skating counteracts the effect of drag applied to the stylus by the record as it spins round, and this causes the stylus to actually become biased to one side of the groove. Hence why anti-skating is sometimes known as bias. Actually setting up anti-skate is a pretty straightforward job, and generally should be set to the same amount of force as used with your counterweight. So if your cartridge's downforce is set to say 1.75 grams, you need to set your anti-skate to 1.75 grams. Although there are some people who recommend setting the anti-skate slightly lighter for the best results. In this case, as I previously mentioned, the tracking force is set to 2.5 grams, so I'm going to set the anti-skate to 2.5 grams. The sync and line anti-skates are just as easy, although you might need to get your manual out to set them. Each of the rungs on the anti-skate hanger corresponds to a small degree of counteracting force that will be applied to the tonearm. So the first rung might apply between 1 and 2 grams of anti-skating force, the next one might be between 2 and 2.5 grams of anti-skating force, and so on and so forth. You want to choose the rung that corresponds as closely as possible to the same amount of force as that you'll be using for the tracking force for your cartridge. So if your tonearm is set to 1.8 grams of force, you'll want to slip the anti-skate wire over the rung that as close as possible matches that, and then hang the sync over the hanger. Voila. Right, we're nearly there, we're so close. Put the beer down, you're not allowed it yet. But please come back for part 3 when we'll connect everything together and talk about some of the pitfalls and issues people can have when doing this. Trust me, it's a little bit more exciting than it sounds. Thank you to all my subscribers and folks who've been sharing my videos with their friends. That is really, really helpful. And a mega huge monumental thanks to all my Patreon chumps. You're absolute darlings. From Josh, the AudioLlama, thank you very much guys. I will see you on the flip side.